What if a career-ending concussion altered your brain and ultimately revealed your life's true calling? Kelsey O'Connor's healing journey is about more than recovery. It's a roadmap for turning pain into purpose. Our wellness hero today is Kelsey O'Connor, a former Division I athlete turned motivational speaker and founder of Life Beyond Labels. After suffering a traumatic brain injury during a college softball game, Kelsey faced months of recovery, ongoing symptoms, and an identity crisis that changed how she viewed herself and her future. A few weeks later, after the concussion, a car accident further complicated her healing process, intensifying symptoms like whiplash and extending her recovery timeline. In this episode of the WellWaveNOW podcast, you will hear what happened, how she rebuilt her sense of self, the tools that supported her recovery, and how she empowers others to overcome mental and emotional setbacks with compassion, clarity, and courage. Welcome to WellWaveNOW, your portal for actionable wellness insights. We, Breck Rice, who's unable to join us today, Dr. Bob Levine, and I, Tim Daniels, are your wellness catalyst, committed to elevating your health, enhancing your functionality, and optimizing your performance at every life stage. WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom lights your wellness path. So welcome, Kelsey. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Yep. And so let's start where your story takes its sharpest turn. Kind of take us through what happened and how serious the injury was you experienced.
Yes. So I was a junior in college at the time. It was our fall season and I was actually at practice. So what happened was I was on first base. I was running to second base.
You were a softball player.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was a softball player. Give a little bit of background. Softball player at North Carolina State. So grew up playing softball, played softball all my life, and ultimately got recruited to play at North Carolina State. So came out to Raleigh, big Division I school, ACC, kind of living my dream, honestly, for the first few years of it.
And what was your position?
I was an outfielder.
Good.
So about mostly center field and left field. Yes.
Now back to what happened. You were on first base, and what happened?
Yes, so it was at practice. I was on first base, running to second base. Half of us were running bases and half of us were in the field. So we were just kind of going through some routine plays. And for those that don't know baseball, softball super well, I'll try to kind of paint a better picture. But our shortstop was coming through to turn a double play. And so as I was running to second base to slide into second base, instead of making a lane on either side of the base path, she just kind of came straight through to make that play. And she was going so fast. So as I was sliding into the base, she just came knee first, full body straight into my face. So her knee collided with my face. And I mean, it pretty instantly, it was just a really, really hard collision. The field was spinning and my head's pounding. And what made it difficult was up to that point, I'd actually had concussions in high school before. So I had been through concussion recovery, second impact syndrome. All of those things were very familiar to me. And one of the complications, as some of you might know with concussions, is the more that you have, sometimes the more severe the next one can be, or the more difficult it can be to recover from the next one. And so by this point I had multiple. And so when that collision happened, it was just so forceful and so painful, pretty abrupt. So my season ended, or my career ended right there on the field that day.
Now and I'm sorry that happened to you. Bob was a D1 athlete as well. But his
I had plenty of concussions, I'll tell you that. But
did you really? Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, you understand.
Right.
I got carried off the field one time on a stretcher, just knocked out cold.
Yeah. But
Wow.
but you mentioned a couple of things in that. Luckily, in my wrestling days, I never had a concussion. But you mentioned a couple of things. What was it? Sudden impacts. What was you went through concussion recovery, but then another term you used after that. And if you can remember those, kind of explain what what the protocol recovery was and what you've been through before, and then what was the second item.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was in high school, the very first concussion I had was whiplash, and I got it from diving. I was diving for a ball and I hit the ground pretty hard and my neck whiplashed. And then a few months later, I had another concussion. And so from those, because they were pretty back to back, they diagnosed me with second impact syndrome because I had more severe symptoms, longer recovery, and then I want to say it was post-concussion syndrome. So I ended up having those.
So second impact syndrome is just merely okay. You had your first impact, now you've got your second one, and it's worse, and you got to be more careful. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yeah. So it's more so like when you haven't fully recovered from the first one and you experience a second one. That would kind of be second impact syndrome because you haven't fully completely healed from the first, and so it kind of doubles up on you in that way. from my understanding.
All right. So you had that, and you got the knee to the face. Was anything broken bone wise, or was this the brain injury?
I was pretty lucky. So it was a head, neck, and jaw injury. So I ended up having to have braces put on. There was a fracture and a dislocation in my jaw. So I had like braces, and then I had like screws and springs. Originally, they were talking about like oral surgery and jaw surgery, and I was trying to avoid that as much as possible. So it was a jaw injury. It also was like some neck damage. I already had nerve damage in my neck from previous injuries, and so it exacerbated that and had some muscular things. But I was lucky in the fact that it was minimal, I guess you could say, in the jaw and neck, and then the head. Yeah.
Just want to ask a question about, you said you had nerve damage in your neck. How did they how was that characterized? And why do you say it was nerve damage as opposed to nerve dysfunction?
So when I was diagnosed, I was still struggling with those two concussions in high school really badly. It had been about 8 to 9 months, and I was still having migraines, firing pain down my neck. And then I went to a concussion specialist in Michigan who diagnosed me with occipital neuralgia. And so it was explained to me that occipital neuralgia was nerve damage in that kind of occipital nerve in the back, kind of like where your neck connects to the base of your skull. So that was how it was explained to me. So I apologize if that's incorrect, but that okay. But yeah, so I was diagnosed with occipital neuralgia. So just I was having a lot of that like fiery burning pain. I still have it now that goes down to the neck and the spine.
Sorry,
You still have it now, huh?
yeah, but you notice, Bob's, how polite she was. That's because she's a Midwesterner. Unlike you from the Northeast. And
I have a little bit of Northeast in me. My dad's from Delco. He's from Philly, so
Oh, yeah, brotherly love. Okay.
yes.
so
I know she was very polite about that. Yeah, it was good.
good Midwestern stock there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you mentioned some of the challenges that you had, the pain that you still have a little bit of today, or some of that. I said a little bit, you didn't say it, but what were the other immediate and sort of immediate impacts that you had on from this latest and most recent concussion that you had?
Yeah, so that's why this one was probably the scariest that I'd experienced. So I had kind of all the things that you would read about with a concussion. I had headaches, migraines, nausea, dizziness, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, like everything around me. Just I felt like I had the spins, like somebody put me in a shaker and spun me around, and I just like couldn't get my ground. But also with this last concussion, I ended up having some just brain fog and some cognitive issues. I was confused a lot. So I was really struggling to read and write in school, and I was really struggling to maintain conversation. I ended up developing kind of later on setting a stutter. So I was just struggling to articulate, like I had thoughts and words and I couldn't explain them directly. And so that was kind of the first time that I had this mix of physical symptoms with the pain and the migraines, and then cognitive symptoms of confusion. And I was forgetting regular things about myself. I was getting lost. And then also emotional symptoms. I would say I was severely depressed and impulsive. I felt like my impulsivity was just more exacerbated, and I was frustrated. As you can hopefully see, I'm a very like happy, joyful person. And at the time it was really scary. I was crying or I was yelling at my family, and they had never seen that before. And so just kind of that whole mix of physical, emotional, and cognitive symptoms was very new for me. And I experienced kind of the whole lot of it.
How long ago did this last one happen?
So I was injured in October of 2021. I would say a lot of the cognitive symptoms, emotional and things like that probably lasted about 6 months. It took me about 10 months, I would say, to heal fully. So I would say it started to get better around that 6 month mark. And then by 10 months, I felt like, okay, I can probably say that I'm as healed as I'm going to be.
So tell us about this car accident that kind of came in between there as well.
Yes, so I was injured on the field. It's actually really unfortunate. I was trying to get better, and then I realized that I couldn't play softball anymore. Just I would be risking too much. I was in too much pain. I didn't even know if I was going to be myself again, let alone the same athlete. So I medically retired after about 6 weeks from the original injury, and then about 2 weeks later. So I want to say it was about 8 weeks after that injury. I was in my car. I had just kind of started driving again. I assume I'd been cleared to drive. It had only been a few weeks since I was like better enough to do that, because it's so hard with a concussion where they gauge you and clear you. And at the time, I was better. So I was driving, and then I ended up getting hit from the side. And so I was leaning forward in my car and I just went full back and forth, whiplash wise. And that just exacerbated everything. The stutter, the confusion, the emotional symptoms. It also just was such a feeling of like I already lost my identity. I had left my team. I was done with the sport. I was in and out of like scared I was going to fail classes and maybe not even continue with college. And I had seen this path for myself, even beyond softball, being social work and conversation, but I couldn't even hold a conversation with somebody. So now even my career path is potentially different. And then all of a sudden I get in this car accident, and it was kind of just this final straw for me of feeling like, how much lower can I go in life and in this healing process? Because I had been 8 weeks out. So I'd started to see like the minimal bit of progress from that initial injury. And then that happened. And I actually don't talk about the car accident a lot all the time when I share my story. I sometimes it's a little overwhelming to talk about kind of that back-to-back injury and so much all at once, but it definitely played a big role in exacerbating those symptoms and that recovery.
Is it overwhelming for you to talk about it? In other words, it's just too much to talk about at once, or is it you don't want to overwhelm the people you're talking to?
That is such a great question because it's something that I've actually pondered recently. Originally, it was very much so I didn't want to overwhelm the audience I was talking to, because when I share about my injury or I share about my story, I never want it to be so much about me that the audience isn't thinking of themselves. Like, I love sharing my story because I've met people that like connect with it and we can just relate to one another. And I think that's amazing. And sometimes sharing too much of what I've been through makes me feel like it's about me. But I also done some reflection in the fact that the car accident itself, I think I also just feel kind of ashamed about it, or I feel embarrassed that all that was happening at once. And so personally, selfishly, I think I also left it out for my own comfortability. So it's definitely a mix,
Yeah,
if
so
that
I would,
answers your
my
question.
personal opinion is it's important to know about the car accident,
Right.
because when you have sequential actions like that, that can really be problematic. And also, it doesn't take very long to explain about the car, you know,
Yeah. No,
I mean,
that's
the
very
car.
true.
Yeah, so I'd recommend that. I'm glad you shared it with us anyway and our audience. Yeah.
And it also adds, part of what we do with this sort of wellness heroes part of our podcast work is we almost, without making it dramatic just to be dramatic, we want people to know just how bad it can be. Because when they now look at you, we have to talk about some of the symptoms that still reside with you and see how well you're functioning. That to me then becomes a spark of hope that say, hey, I can come back from this too. And it's a driving force to say, I want to come back from this. I can get this done. If Kelsey O'Connor can do it, then with her help or with help of others, I can do it too and make it back. So it's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So let's start going into your recovery a little bit here. So first, as we get in that recovery, so what were the doctors telling you? Were they saying, Kelsey, you're going to come back completely from this, or were they cautious? What was their kind of prognosis for you?
Oh, that one's hard because I will say one of the most, and even after sharing my story and talking to different neurologists and psychologists, everybody across the board says that when dealing with concussions, like you get so much different advice, like so many different perspectives on it. They don't really say like whether or not you're going to come back fully. So the doctors I was seeing a neurologist, an occipital or occupational therapist, general doctor, a lot of different doctors. They were basically telling me I didn't play a contact sport, so it was up to me, but at the same time, I would be risking permanent damage if I didn't have it already. They're like, it's kind of we can't tell if it's going to be forever, if you're going to get better or not, kind of at that 3-4 month mark even. And so I feel like concussion advice is kind of vague. They can't necessarily tell you you're going to get completely better because I think there's no guarantee ever, because they're just so individual depending on the person's healing and their history and their background. But as I got better, of course, they were giving me different options, but I don't even know that I necessarily got concrete advice per se or direction on how well I was going to be or how I was going to get better, which I think kind of contributed to my fear even in not being sure when, how well, or what I was going to recover from, and the time span, if that answers your question.
Yeah. So you had some fear or apprehension about how well you were going to be because you weren't getting a clear picture from anybody, getting clear thoughts from others. Did you set a goal for yourself and say, I'm coming back? Or did you just say, are you just decide? How'd you approach it yourself from your own, I hate the word mindset, but I'm really struggling to find another term right now.
Good luck.
So how did you set your mind for it as you approach this?
Yes, no, it's such a good question. I think in the beginning, obviously in those first fresh few weeks after the first injury and then after the car accident when it happens again, the goal is honestly to get to the next day, feeling so overwhelmed by all these symptoms. And being 20, like freshly 20 years old, I was just really scared for how, if it was going to long term impact my life. Like I have hopefully a long life ahead, and I'm just scared. I don't know what my future is going to look like. So those first few days, few weeks were really just about the mindset of not isolating myself. I think it was really pivotal that I had ended up having family around me. My family had actually moved 15 minutes from campus a few months before, so they were around me. So I think not isolating and just really trying to get to the next day. And then as some of the weeks went by, then my mindset became picturing myself healthier, happier, in a better place. And I didn't know when that was going to be, but I honestly woke up and sat for 10 minutes and like thought about it and visualized it, and then asked myself, what can I do today that gets me a little bit closer to that? So I started reading about diet, like foods that were good for brain health. And I was really prioritizing sleep and trying to do that. I was progressively going for walks and doing exercise that didn't give me migraines, but that got me moving. And so I was trying to control the pieces that I could when so much felt outside of my control. So I think the mindset initially when going through something that difficult is to get to the next day and do what you can to just try to have a little bit of hope and a little bit of faith. And then as time goes on and time really did start to heal, it was also a little bit harder because it felt looming, and it was just picturing myself in that better version and trying to take it one day at a time. As cliche as that sounds, I hate to put it
Sure.
that way, but really one day at a time.
All right, and you mentioned a little bit of faith. A little bit of faith in what, Kelsey?
So my faith is a big part of my life. So it was faith in God and faith in, yeah, just faith in God. And it's interesting in some of those moments, like you don't understand. Like I was very confused, and I won't really begin to understand why bad things happen or that whatever is meant to happen. But it was kind of one of those moments where I was at a crossroads with my faith. Faith has been a big part of my life, and then it was, I needed my faith I needed to believe that, meaning I could make something meaningful out of it, and something beautiful could be made out of it. And I don't know why it happened or what the purpose is, but so for me, it was faith in God, just because that's personal to me.
I'll preach to you a little bit here, Kelsey. People often say it happens for things happen for a reason, meaning that it's meant to happen. I don't necessarily follow that philosophy. I follow
Mm-hmm.
more the second philosophy because that's what's stated in biblically. All things work together for good for those who are called according to God and follow His purpose. Paraphrasing that portion of it. So therefore, it can be made to work together for good and brought out for that. I think things happen where we don't say, yeah. In fact, one other part says, I'll make your valleys high and your mountains low, but it doesn't say you're not going to run into valleys and you're not going to run into mountains. And we kind of live in a fallen world, and that fallen world, things happen. But it's not in it's not meant and intended to say this is what I'm going to do to Bob. I'd like to do a lot of things to Bob. I don't have that power. It's not what I'm going to do to Bob because it's there, right? Not just that part.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's good. But now with that, so you started talking about some of the things that you did for yourself. Look at diet, look for brain health, exercise. So what was your program in addition to that to bring yourself back?
So I was, as far as like diet and food, my mom and I would go to Whole Foods, and I was doing like making smoothies with frozen blueberries and chia seeds and flaxseed, and kind of reading some of the benefits of different things. I won't speak on it because I'm not a dietitian, but some of the things, the avocados, the salmon, omega 3s, things that I was reading were helpful for the
Great stuff.
brain.
Great stuff.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you can attest. So I was doing a lot of that. I was going to my therapy appointments. So I was seeing a physical therapist and an occupational therapist. The difference kind of, in my different therapies being like gross motor skills. So some of the bigger neck stretches and different neck pain I was having. And then some of the fine motor and the eye movements where I was looking at a spoon with a metronome, and I would do that at home over and over again, or sit up and down in a chair and walk and turn. And those were very, very minimal movements, but things that made me dizzy. So really staying committed to my therapy and staying committed to it even when I felt like I was quote unquote graduating from it, working on those skills. I was doing different like brain puzzles to try to keep myself sharp in that sense. So I was just staying really committed to some of those things personally. Like I would put them on a little calendar, on a little list for the day, and try my best to do some of that. So it was helped by my family, by my professors around me, by my doctors around me. So I really did have a good support system of people that were keeping me on track to do one little thing a day.
And you mentioned that you would get dizzy and you feel faint. Is that one of the symptoms? How often did you feel that?
Yes, it was really often in the beginning, in the first few months, anytime I stood up or I mean, even just from moving some of the time, it truly just felt like I had the spins and I was gonna pass out, and I just didn't really know what to do with that. And it ultimately faded as I healed over time. But yes,
Did you ever get any massage therapy or anything like that?
I did actually. Yes. So at the time, I was still able to see our athletic trainer a few times, and she would do some massage therapy, which was very nice. I was very grateful for that. And then sometimes there was like a massage therapist at our physical therapy office, so I was able to get it through that, and that was really helpful.
Why do you bring that up, Bob?
Well, I mean, the work that I do involves a lot of soft tissue, neuromuscular retraining. And so when you've had all this trauma going on, the soft tissues go into excess contraction and they can be unbalanced and they don't really let go. A lot of the times the muscles just stay in contraction. So I have a technique that I call effective muscle release, which retrains the muscles to finally let it go because they're in an automatic pattern of constriction and guarding, and that's why it takes sometimes a very long time to go through the path. You're young, so as a youth, younger person, you have more flexibility, and some people who are on the older side, they have more patterns that have built up. It takes a longer time, so neuromuscular reeducation is really important in my view. And I've done clinical studies with migraine headaches and cervicogenic headaches and with people, and using soft tissue manipulation to help with neuromuscular reeducation to help with that stuff. And just getting everything balanced is really a challenge. And people have to know what they're doing to make that happen. So that's why I brought that up, because some massage therapists are trained in especially some deep, like I'm trained in deep tissue manipulation for structural balancing. So if somebody has a tilted shoulder and their neck is pulling on one side and they don't even know it's happening, it puts them at the threshold of moving into a problem. So that's where you had
Oh,
to get away from. You had to move away from. You were probably like, if your threshold of pain and discomfort was here and you're operating at this level and you kick over, you get pain, discomfort. So the trick is, how do we get you back down to here so that when you have movements, they don't trigger go over threshold and trigger the symptom, if you will.
wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So I can talk to you about, there's some simple little things I can show you over a Zoom call, what you can do for your neck, for instance. It would really be probably helpful. We can talk about that
I
another
would
time.
love that. We'll reconnect. We'll circle back on that. I would love that.
So, were there one? How would you categorize replace yourself now? How do you feel now? Most times, how do you think you feel mentally, physically?
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, I'm very, very lucky. I recovered really, really well. Yeah, I mean, I feel very grateful. I feel like I've made a pretty remarkable recovery from where I was to where I am now. Even being a speaker, I never ever thought that would have been in the cards for me if you were to ask me back when I was recovering. There's still a few lingering things, and mostly only things that I can see, which can be a little bit frustrating at the same time. So I struggle still with a lot of the nerve or the neck pain, and pain in that area, jaw pain or headaches here and there. The frustrating part I would say as well is sometimes I have brain fog, especially when I get tired or just kind of get a little bit emotional. I can definitely tell that I'm different than I was before. I was actually just talking to one of my family members about how there's times where I will put everything in my calendar and I set up all the parameters for myself to be able to make things, and I still forget nowadays. Whereas before, I never was late to a single practice. I was always on top of every assignment. I was always quick to text back. And nowadays I just struggle, and it's not necessarily an excuse. I try everything in my power to be as on top of things as I can, but there's times where I struggle with a little bit of brain fog here or a little bit of just the puzzle pieces aren't connecting, the dots aren't connecting. But for the most part, I've made a really good recovery. I'm very grateful.
Good. And it's fantastic. I love the way you apply yourself. And as Bob, kind of intimated there are still things out there for you that I think could even take you beyond where you're at. And there's hopefully you've got plenty of time, Lord willing, to to take those steps and you can get beyond where you're at. So that's good. But where you're at is actually, my estimation is pretty fantastic right now, given where you're at on that.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
would agree. I agree with that for sure. Yeah, I mean, your recovery is remarkable considering what you had to go through, and I think the compounding injuries are really a factor. I mean, when you talk about a car wreck, right after, and with all the symptoms that came on right after that, just following your softball injury, I mean, that's a big deal. That's really something to have to be able to come back from that. And so, it takes something. I wanted to go ahead, Tim.
Oh, well, that's good. Back to something you mentioned earlier about your support system. How important was that to you? And did you kind of put together a support system? Or you think people just kind of naturally gravitated towards supporting you?
My support system was everything to me. It's interesting too. I would say I actually had my team and my softball program actually wasn't very supportive, and so I had this opposite end of feeling like very misunderstood with this invisible injury. But on the other end, my support system, my family, I adore my family. I love them so much. I talk about them all the time. They carried me through school and helped me to finish school. They would sit with me. I mean, they would do flashcards with me to help me with my speech, or they would help talk through papers with me. And my professors, when I reached out to them to ask them if I could sit with my brother and go through philosophy readings with him, they were like, absolutely, whatever you need to do, we're here to help you. So my social work department at school was fantastic. I don't think I would have finished my undergraduate studies, honestly, if they were as supportive as they were. I think they just naturally gravitated towards supporting me. My family was there. My dad, my mom, my brothers, they were like living here and they were with me every single step of the way. My doctors were so kind. So I think I also went out and sought out friends. So I ended up making some really good friends after kind of isolating myself. I went off the grid for a few months and cut out a lot of the friendships that were around me and was struggling with some other things, and then ultimately tried to open myself back up, started volunteering, started doing more things as well through my social work outside of myself to be part of my community and also feel like I was serving so that I wasn't just constantly feeling like I was taking from everybody around me. And that was a really pivotal part. So I felt connected with my community. So all that to say, I think a balance of me searching for it, but also me just being very grateful for having it already around me. And they just stepped up when I really needed it.
Okay. And so let's you talked about your social work there a little bit. Let's go down that path. Were you and I really wrestling with how to phrase this one. So, but were you always this giving and loving and thoughtful at this young age? We listened to I listened to your commencement speech that you gave, which I encourage everybody to go out and listen to. But it was very insightful, and I said this is coming from what were you at 22 at the time?
I was 21.
21, and very focused on not so much what you do, but who you are and what you will be and how to become that. And so, hey, this is pretty good. So, do you think did your journey bring this out on you? Bring it out in you, or were you always that way, Kelsey?
Well, first of all, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. I like to think I was always this way. If I were to point back to the way that I was, even just growing up, I was kind of always the person that loved to just ask people how they're feeling and talk about how they're feeling and try to be a safe person. I was very involved in other things, even in high school. So as much as softball was a big part of my life, I was always part of starting like a nonprofit chapter, or taking care, helping my neighbors, take care of their kids, or take care of some of my friends with special needs and disabilities, and just kind of being part of community even early at a young age. So I like to think that it was just another opportunity for me to grow in that area. But that's a very sweet question of you to ask. So I would say I do feel like I've always had a heart for it. But I was able to kind of display that. Was very lucky to display that through the speech.
And Dr. Bob was good for something. He said. What I just said, I encourage people to go and look at it. Dr. Bob said, why don't you just put this in the show notes, Tim, so people can have that link to go listen to it. So it was very kind how we phrased that, and we'll do that. But now, and so I appreciate that. I haven't been called sweet in a long time, but that's a
Yeah, she's generous, Tim.
but also, but part of that, as people will see or will hear and see when they listen to that, is also it was very, very Christian, like you said. When you said God, I'm assuming you're from the Christian God.
Mm-hmm.
And you said in that talk how you look at the inside people for three, for a while. I think it was three things, and you can share those three things. If your brain fog doesn't get to you, Kelsey, you
I'm good. I'm good.
share those three things with us. I can't think of that many, and I can't think of that many 21-year-olds, especially people who were a high performing D1 athlete that really look that way. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So the three things were your attitude, how you treat others, and then what makes you a unique human being.
Mhm.
And I feel like, I guess I came up with those things. Actually, it's one of those things where I do feel like I was that way before, but then at the same time, when I was also really wrapped up in the things that I was doing and achieving. So even though I was involved a lot in high school, I was just very proud of all the things that I was doing. And then when all of that was kind of taken away, I also found myself still feeling like I was in competition mode all the time and recognizing that I was not always describing people by who they are. I was describing them by their job or their athletic status or whatever the case was. But then the people in my life that I loved, the reason I loved them and they were in my support system had nothing to do with their titles and everything to do with how incredible they were in their hearts. And so I just wanted to get better about the way I was describing people. That was something in my control. So I actually wrote down those three things just kind of top of mind on my notes app on my phone and made a resolution. And it just said, like, my resolution is to describe people by 1, 2, 3, their attitude, how they treat others, and what makes them unique. And so when I was going to write my speech, I was digging through my journals and just kind of thinking about what I wanted to say, and found that resolution that I'd made. And I really do feel like it healed the way that I saw myself and my perspective and saw the world. So I love that. A to you. But yeah, so those are the three things I love it. I love that.
Really, go for it. You take it. That's your new your program or your approach or your, how you remember, how people can easily remember. It's your attitude, how you treat people, and what makes people unique.
Yes, thank you. I've never seen it in an acronym like that. I love that.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So is this what? So let's kind of transition into your work now, which I think is around this. And is that what you mean by life beyond labels, as you call it? So what is this life beyond labels work? What is it, and then how do you do it?
Yes, so Life Beyond Labels, I started it after I had posted my speech online and it ended up going viral. And what I really loved about that was just the different people from all over the world with different occupations and backgrounds and stories that were messaging me and had resonated with it. And it's truly just about the fact that we can control our attitude and how we treat people and then really appreciate what makes us unique. And that connects to all of us. And so Life Beyond Labels was really about speaking about that and touching on that. So I started a small business for my speaking. But as I've kind of continued through school, I got my master's degree in social work and I'm getting a mental performance certification. My goal is really to kind of expand that, to continue speaking to schools and businesses and nonprofits as I've been doing the last few years, but also expanding into just working with teams and corporations and workplaces and just helping people to even help each other in that way of seeing them beyond whatever that label of athlete or professional. Maybe you've been in a career your whole life. Maybe it's been a relationship that you just got out of after. I just had a woman message me yesterday that got out of a relationship for 19 years and it really struck her because she started telling me I'm kind and I'm generous, and people that are truly starting to describe themselves to me and what they see in themselves. That was really beautiful. So I started Life Beyond Labels just as a small speaking business for me to continue getting it. I started getting invited to universities and conferences and different places to talk about my story, and not just the softball part, but this, I'd say, mindset part of just describing people in this way and why that helped me turn this pain into purpose and struggle into opportunity, and how beautiful it became viral on the internet and people from all over the world saw it. And now I get to connect with people all over the country in person and hear different stories, and just the impact of that is really special. And I'm very grateful for that.
And do you do one-on-one coaching with people as well?
Yes, I do. Yes. So I've started to do that as well, both in the public speaking space and then the mental performance space.
Okay. And what kind of transformation have you seen? Some good transformations? Have you seen some good blossoming come from that? Sure. If so, share that with us.
So actually, we'll say, as far as the one-on-one coaching, it's not something I was able to do until recently, because this last year, while I was getting my master's degree in social work, I was doing teletherapy. And so I was actually doing kind of supervised therapy with student athletes. That was my internship / role. And so I wasn't able to I had to put some of my coaching on pause. And that I will say was really special and a great opportunity to work in the mental health side of it. And I did see transformation there. And as far as the coaching side, I won't say I have had transformation in one-on-one coaching yet, because I've just started working with my lovely, amazing clients. However, I will say some of the people that I've gotten to connect with, even virtually, that have honestly just stayed in touch, whether I went to go speak at their school or like their students that reached out, or I had students that reached out for me to help them with a speech, and I didn't even call it coaching. I was just eager to talk to anybody and be helpful. So we hopped on Zoom, we've met a few times, that kind of thing. So I guess they're clients, but not technically. And I've seen some true transformation in the way that they, one, are able to communicate their story, and the way that they're able to see themselves and find their confidence, not from necessarily just their skills or their story or these external things, but in who they are and the message that they're sharing with others and the impact that they're making because of their personality and leaning into that. So that's been very special.
And so, and you say special, in that regard, what do you personally get out of this work, Kelsey?
Fulfillment. I feel so fulfilled. I feel, when I think about where I was and healing as much as I have to now get to help I was poured into by some really incredible people in my family, and I know that not everybody has that. And so now I can scale that love to other people and just be a good, not necessarily a family figure, but just a good person for others during their time. I feel so beyond fulfilled that I can be a small part of somebody in their healing journey or their just journey in their life, of not just their tangible success, but like their life rich success in feeling confident or feeling fulfilled themselves or feeling joyful. And if my story or my advice helped them in a little bit of a way to get there, I mean, what a gift.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice. That's great. So did you finish your master's, or are you still working on your master's?
I did. I finished it this May.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. So what's next? What are the next steps for you?
Yes, so now is actually, it's been a really exciting time. So I am back into public speaking. So I am traveling to a few different speaking engagements this fall, all different kinds of places, athletics, nonprofits, schools. So that's really exciting. So I'll continue with the keynote speaking aspect of it, but then I'm also starting mental performance coaching, that one-on-one coaching, the team coaching. So that's where I'm been able to build these last couple of weeks. It's only been a few weeks now, but build some client bases and do some coaching, which I love to do.
So how do people reach you if they want to engage you from a speaking standpoint, and or on the sort of personal interaction level?
Yeah, so I would say my website is the best place. It's kelseyo'connor.com. Very straightforward. There's a link on there to schedule a time with me or reach out. And I would say my website is the best place to do that. Or my social media is Kelsey O'Connor 6. And I am always checking my messages as much as possible to respond to everybody that I can.
Okay, great. So you're doing quite a bit. So you got your speaking, you've got your personal engagement you're doing things on now. You've completed your master, so there's certainly a lot on your plate. But have you wrapped all this up yet into a big dream goal for yourself, or a dream project? Or are there any dream collaborations aside from collaborating with Dr. Bob that come to mind for? And I kid Dr. Bob a lot, but Dr. Bob is a renowned brain researcher, and he's also used to run the Henry Ford Center for Integrative Wellness, and he's one of the leading experts in drug-free pain elimination. So, but because he's so expert, that's why I like to kid him so much. It might just be a little bit of jealousy that makes me do that with him. But back to that question is, do you have a big dream project, dream goal, or a dream collaboration that you want to do, Kelsey?
That's fantastic. Well, this, of course, was my dream. I'm very grateful to be here. But my long-term dream, I would really, the keynote speaking has become really my dream. That's been my kind of favorite thing to do, and I love it. So I would love to continue to build that. My dream is to give a TED Talk. So that's honestly my next goal on the docket, is I would love to give a TED Talk and be able to spread ideas that way.
What would be the subject of the TED Talk?
I have been grappling back and forth with whether or not I would make it similar to what's kind of out there, Life Beyond Labels, or something different of communication and how just kind of how we tell our story and how we can tell it in a way that connects for other people. So sharing our stories with an audience-centered focus. So those are my two different two different buckets. But dream collaboration, well, I feel like this is an opportunity for me to say it out loud, but I feel like I'm blanking. I had it ready to go and I'm blanking. I do have a panel coming up with some MLB players this fall, so I'm very excited for that. So as a Cubs fan, my dream collaboration would be to be on a panel with some Cubs players.
No, so where are you? Where are you from? Where are you from in the Midwest, Kelsey?
I'm from Naperville, Illinois, so outside Chicago.
So yes. I lived in Chicago for 5 years. I wonder. I from somehow it was flashing in my mind Indiana. I was saying, what's somebody from Indiana doing being a Cub fan? But well, yes, we can do that. But not a White Sox fan, though. Huh?
No.
It's a Cubby. All right. So now, but if we take that, someone else facing trauma, pain right now that feels kind of stuck, how would you counsel them?
I would truly just help them I would encourage them to take it one day at a time and really think about what can they control in one day. Because I think when you make it less daunting, when you're going through something so difficult, the other side of feeling better or, achieving success, whatever that is, just feels so far away. So I would just ask them questions and see how they're feeling, but also just encourage them to control what they can within one day and make those small little goals and encourage them that those small little goals will lead to a better outcome in time, so that time will heal.
Put this in your hands, Kelsey. Our time, unfortunately, is about coming to an end here. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Any thoughts? Anything that you want to communicate you think we haven't touched upon?
Not that we haven't touched upon, but I do always just like to end with, for anybody that's listening, one, thank you for listening, and two, everybody experiences challenge and change in their life. And so if that's a period that you're in, that just encouraging you that you are more than what's your circumstances. You're also more than your labels. And so, how you wake up each day and the attitude you try to have and how you treat other people and what makes you unique and you a wonderful person. Nobody can take that away from you. So I always just like to kind of encourage that at the end as my wrap up. So thank you for asking.
Well, you're quite welcome. That's a good wrap up. And I want to thank you for being with us today on this WellWaveNOW podcast. Certainly I think your story is one of resilience and of hope and determination that people facing health and wellness challenge can learn from that. But also I think what just who you are as a person and what you gained from that experience and that being able to help people, like I said, view others, work towards their drive and achieve what they need. I think you bring a lot to the table on that. So wish you all the best in terms of getting those speaking engagements and getting those clients to help out, because you've got a lot to bring to the table there for others. And since Breck's not here, I'll take Breck's favorite saying. So until we see you again, remember, wellness, it's in you.